great involved all in the same stars, and we all understand where to go. Before I start this review process, though, there is one thing that I'd like to talk to you about. Study goal number 33, you might remember, started our unit. The first thing we did was study goal 33. And I said, keep your eyes open for any characteristic of good agriculture versus any characteristic of bad agriculture. You might remember I said, write down all the terms that you see in good ag or in bad ag, and then later in the unit, we'll learn more about each of them. So my number 33 looks like this. And my point is, that was discussed in 2 study goals. The alternatives were discussed in 3 or 4 different study goals. This was 2 or 3 different study goals, and then that was a study goal. That was a study goal. This was discussed in 3 study goals, and its alternative was discussed in 2 or 3. So one of the things I'm going to do today is tell you this is part of 33, this is part of 33, this is part of 33. Meaning, if you wanted to, you could take maybe half of the unit and use it as a comparison of good versus bad agricultural practices. Because there's 70 study goals, some students are overwhelmed by the sheer volume. So if it helps you, great. But it'll get really repetitive, especially because all of assignment 4.2 was about agricultural practices. So obviously that whole assignment is either on the good side or on the bad side. If it doesn't help you, ignore it. Also remember that stars is not what's on the test tomorrow. There will be things on the test that get no stars today, and there will be things that get stars today that won't be on the test. Here we go. Kwashiorkor and marasmus, guaranteed to be on the AP test. They always are. Synergistic effect. There are good ones, there are bad ones. But remember that we talked about them in the agriculture unit because of pesticide safety testing. We can test single pesticides, but there's simply too many agrochemicals to test every possible combination of chemicals that could occur in your body. So synergistic tests are just kind of like, roll the dice, hey, they're not dead yet, all right. Biological control. And there are 3 kinds in your reader, study goal number 59. 3 kinds of biological control. Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, as in BT corn, gets a start. And to prevent your confusion, old growth forest is not old trees. Make sure you don't tangle those. Moving on to study goals. Number 1 gets a star. Number 2 gets a star. And by the way, number 2 is how do we solve the food crises of the future. Numbers 57 and 70 in your reader are both about possible solutions to the long-term food question. I have to say, your generation will have to answer that question. So 57 and 70, in my humble opinion, are 3-star goals because people your age are going to have to figure out how to feed each other. Number 3 gets a star, is associated with 54. And don't forget that we discussed in class the issue of food distribution. Reasons why food distribution is not equitable. Number 5 gets 1 star. Number 6 gets 3 stars, and we still haven't talked about it, so let's do this. Did anybody notice a relationship between soil color and water retention? How many of your dark soils had higher water retention? And how many of your light soils had higher water retention? Now, I'll bet you I can say something about this. Those of you who raised your hands for light soil with high water retention, my hunch is that one had more clay than the other one. Am I right? Yeah. Those of you who had dark soil with higher water retention, my hunch is that your soil had a lot of litter on top. Am I right? Yeah. Here's how I knew those things. Because the 2 things that most affect water retention are either organic material remember that the magic of the soil is the decomposition that happens there. And so all that organic material used to be living plant stuff, all the phloem and the xylem is little tubes. Those little tubes are, by definition, hollow. They hold water. So if you have a lot of organic material, you have high water retention because of the humus, not humus, which is little tubes from plants. The other thing that gives you high water retention is clay. The opposite of both is true. The desert has very little water retention because it has neither small particle sizes nor organic material. Larger particles do not retain water well, and soils without organic material do not retain water well. Can anybody imagine 2 reasons why water retention equals nutrient load? Yeah, by definition. By definition, all plant nutrients must be water soluble because obviously plants drink. So water retention equals high nutrients because plant nutrients are water soluble and they need that water to be available in the soil. Second, water is critical to the soil food web. You can't do decomposition and all that cool magic mojo without water. So high organic material and or high clay means high water retention. High water retention means more available nutrients for plant life. Now, there was this guy named blah 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 Liebig. I forget his first name. And he had this thing called Liebig's law. Kind of. And his quote-unquote law of soil management was figure out whatever is most missing in the dirt and add it from above. He was really the guy that got us thinking about fertilizers, hydroponics, and there's a lot of ways to explain why he was probably wrong. But the best explanation I can give you is kind of a fuzzy, hippie babble. you understand that ecological complexity is required to have a lot of nutrients in the soil, it's really difficult to make something which is artificial and complex. You guys understand artificial intelligence is difficult. We can make computers that are smarter, but not more intelligent. You get my distinction? They have more processing power, but our brains are complex, and we cannot do that artificially. You understand what I mean by this? Artificial intelligence is very difficult. We can make computers that solve problems faster than you do, as long as it's a narrow range of problems. But your actual intellectual complexity is hard to do artificially. We can make a lot of medical wonders, but our body is very complex, so we really cannot build an artificial human. Likewise, soil nutrients are complex because there's more diversity underground than there is above ground. This food web is technically more complicated than any above ground food web. So how could we hope to artificially create the nutrient profile that results from such a complex interaction within the soil ecosystem? The best way I can say this is you cannot fake this magic mojo in the soil. You cannot use bottles and test tubes to add every possible nutrient at all these right levels because it's a complex interaction. That chemistry has a lot of ingredients and a lot of processes, and it's really tough to do that in a test tube and then pour it into the ground. Yeah. It sounds to me like some pretty 1950s thinking.
Something like it was like focus on macronutrients, like adding nitrogen.
Yeah, that's another problem. When we talk about the big three, it's pretty straightforward. When we realize that plants,
Most fertilizers.
right, but we realize that plants are affected by roughly 20 to 50 micronutrients, then that chemistry gets really tricky because they interact with each other, and temperature and pH changes affect their absorbability and their solution rate. All right. So the thing I don't like about Liebig is he forgot the soil as a living, breathing ecosystem, and I need you to remember that that creates a complex nutrient chemical profile. We cannot do that artificially. It's too complex to fake it. Oh, and remember also, how many society equals humans? Questions about this? 9 gets 1 star, goes with 34. And 55. Number 10 gets 1 star. And now we're starting to talk about agricultural practices. So I told you there would be a lot of them. Number 10 is one of the many study goals that are a part of 33. So if it helps you, study them that way. 10 is part of 33. 12 gets 1 star, goes with 21 and 63. And that whole conversation is part of 33. And number 13 gets 1 star. We said 2, 57, and 70 were about the food supplies of the future. That has to consider the water supplies of the future. Number 14 gets 1 star for rotational grazing. Number 15 gets 1 star and is really helpful in 33. 15 is like the entire left side of number 33. Uh, 17 goes with number 6.
gets 2 stars.